depression is a couple of different things. So you can think about depression in terms of a dimension that all of us on any given day are at some point of like how sad our mood is. So you can talk about it in terms of mood with people less depressed and people more depressed. Or you can think of it as a category. So the people who hang out at the high end of like the depressed mood, frequently they may have tripped over into the category of depression. So psychologists talk about this as a major depressive disorder or clinical depression. So in order to be diagnosed with a clinical depression, you have to have depressed mood like daily for at least 2 weeks. And you also have to demonstrate decreased interest in doing things that normally give you pleasure. And then there's a whole bunch of other symptoms that go along with depression that you have to have. I think it's like 4 of the following symptoms. You have to have issues with eating. So some people, when they get depressed, all they want to do is eat. Like I had my friend, and she broke up with her boyfriend, and I can just remember her sitting there with like a tub of ice cream, just eating it right out of the tub. Other times when people get depressed, their appetite goes away completely, and they don't want to eat anything. Like eating is a lot of work. I have a friend who suffers from depression, and when she's depressed, she's like experienced with depression, so like she knows what to do. She buys herself easy to eat food, like grapes or like salads from Wegmans, where all she has to do is open the container and eat it right out of the container, like no prep. And she remembers having this thought that her plants were all dying because she couldn't get herself organized to water the plants. And she's like, yeah, you know where the sink is. If you're thirsty, go get yourself a drink of water. She's talking to her plants. So there's issues with eating, there's issues with sleeping. Some people, when they get depressed, all they want to do is sleep all the time, like 24/7. They don't want to get out of bed. Some people, when they get depressed, have like initial onset insomnia. So they go to bed and they're tired, but they can't fall asleep. But even more common is waking up really, really early. Like you wake up, like say the alarm's gonna go off at 6, and you wake up at 3, and you can't get back to sleep, and you know that you're gonna have to get up at 6, and you're gonna be tired, and you really want to go back to sleep, but you just can't. That's called early morning awakening. Some of the other symptoms are like energy, like with fatigue. Internal tempo might slow down. So people who are seriously depressed, it's called psychomotor retardation. They move and talk really slowly. You just want to I kind of want to reach out and pull the words out of their mouth. You have to be patient, but they don't move a lot. They're really, really, like, they don't get much done in a day. They kind of sit. There are thinking issues, lack of concentration, and thoughts about low self-worth, like low self-esteem, like everybody hates me, nobody likes me. And people may also have suicidal ideation where they think about ending their lives. And sometimes people attempt or commit suicide. So it can be a very serious disorder, and it tends to be recurrent. So once you've had an episode of depression, you have an increased probability of having future episodes. So the thing is, and so especially if college students are going to be watching this, the first time you have that experience of depression, it's not something to ignore. It's something to go get treated, because you can sort of nip it in the bud and learn how to deal with it and learn how to prevent it from coming back. Because it changes your brain chemistry. So this is what we know. There's a part of your brain, it's called the limbic system, and it's where you process emotions. So bad things happen, and the limbic system starts firing. Your amygdala might start firing. Amygdala is a structure in your brain that has to do with emotion. And the hypothalamus is part of the limbic system. And so if bad things are happening, like you lost your job or your girlfriend broke up with you, or some combination, you have to process that. And so all that stress gets that part of your brain active. And so the hypothalamus sends a message to the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus says, um, do something, basically. And so the pituitary gland releases a hormone called, okay, I can actually say it, adrenocorticoid thyropic hormone, but everybody else calls it ACTH. It's just simpler to know it as ACTH. ACTH travels through your bloodstream and it goes to your adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands then release cortisol. And cortisol in small doses is really good for your body. It's like your naturally occurring cortisone. So just like athletes get shots in their joints to like decrease inflammation with synthetic cortisone, your body creates cortisol and it does that basic wear and repair on your body, but in high doses, when your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland axis is in overdrive because you're processing all this emotional stuff, you just keep releasing cortisol, and the cortisol travels back to your brain, and it basically trashes your neurotransmitter receptors. I think about it like a rock star in a hotel room. Like, you guys don't remember 80s glam rock, but the rock stars would go in, all the heavy metal guys, they would go in and they would just destroy hotel rooms. Well, that's what cortisol does in your brain. It breaks the receptors. And when your neurons don't have working receptors, they can't fire. So these neurons start shutting down in your brain, and it messes with your sleep. It messes with your appetite. It messes with your energy level. So there are 3 symptoms that I think as a clinician, when I see these in my clients, that I know that they're just run-of-the-mill, maybe situational depression has kicked into overdrive, and it's now a physical depression. Early morning awakening, loss of appetite, and psychomotor retardation. Those are 3 really key symptoms that tell you that the biology is now involved. It's brilliant what it does. It is just really brilliant what it does. So if you have, like, say you've got this arm is a neuron, and so is this arm, and so this arm is going to release neurotransmitter to these receptors over here. So now my receptors are all dead, right? Like the cortisol's come, they've killed the receptors. This neuron, when it releases neurotransmitter, it has a way after the action potential of cleaning it up. It just cleans it up. It's got like these little vacuum pumps that cleans it up, and it also releases these little Pac-Men that come out and metabolize it. I always think about those Pac-Men coming up and eating up the extra. So when it releases, okay, so when you take the drug, what it does is it ties up the Pac-Man, so the Pac-Man don't come out anymore. That's the type of drug called MAO inhibitors, or it breaks the pumps that sucks things back in. And there's a class of drugs that are like the key ones right now, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. They only break the serotonin pumps. So what happens is this neuron will fire, and there'll be neurotransmitter out here, and the drugs will activate the reuptake process. So you end up with like all this neurotransmitter in the synaptic cleft. So then this neuron senses that there's all this neurotransmitter, and it sends a message down to where neurotransmitter is synthesized, like to the cell body, and it says, don't make any more. We've got plenty. There's like all this stuff in the cleft. Don't make any more. So now when this action potential fires, it's not releasing any more neurotransmitter, and then this neuron seems to sense that there's not enough neurotransmitter being released. And so it does, like if you were like fishing in a stream and like all the fish are almost gone, and so before you'd been using nets but you caught all the fish, but you really needed those fish, you would make a net that crossed all the way across the river, right? So the water could go through and you would get every single fish. Well, that's what this neuron does, is it goes, oh my God, there's no neurotransmitter. So it rebuilds all the receptors and you start feeling better. Like this neuron comes back alive because it's got new receptors. That's how it works. And that's why it takes 3 weeks. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for these drugs to kick in because all that has to happen. All those steps.